quorum, so we may do that. We're going to start off with something from the Audit and Finance Chair, which is a statement that needs to be read
into the public record.
Yes, so over to you.
At the March
Dr. Harris.
14th quarterly Audit and Finance Committee meeting, that was yesterday evening, the Office of Internal Audit presented an internal audit report on the use of school facilities at Rainier Beach High School. All findings and recommendations are discussed at a public Audit and Finance Committee meeting, and the completed reports are available online at the Office of Internal Audit's public webpage. Click on Departments under the District tab, then click on Internal Audit. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Audit and Finance Chair, Director Harris. So we now have reached the action items. And the first thing we have here, well, we have added something, which is the Highly Capable Student Program Comprehensive Plan. So, yes.
Chief of Schools, Wyatt Jesse.
Well, first of all, I think we have to read the motion.
Oh.
And a second.
My apologies.
Here, Leslie, here it is.
I move that the board approve the Highly Capable Students Program Comprehensive Plan as resubmitted to OSPI for school year 2016-17 to support highly capable services and the district's gifted eligibility identification process, and that the school board authorize the superintendent to apply for the allocation of funds from OSPI and to accept and use these funds.
I second the motion.
Thank you. All right, Chief of Schools, Wyatt Jesse.
Hi, Wyatt Jesse, Chief of Student Support Services.
Oh. Sorry.
That's all right. I think you guys just like to say chief sometimes.
Okay.
So I just wanted to, as I was discussing with you and specifically with Director Harris in response to her question, I did want to get an opportunity. I'd sent some information during the meeting as a follow-up, and specifically to, again, the IBX program at Ingram. And the reason why we did check that box is we do provide that as service. And I just, part of it is the issue raised by staff and specifically the principal, Martin Flo, is those students, a lot of time, they finish and they get their IB diploma after their junior year. And so they look for things to do. And so they, as part of that advancement, we do have mentoring, there are mentoring opportunities. This is based on the program at Interlake High School in Bellevue and trying to replicate that. And so the specifically in their first cohort, there was about mid to high teens for the number of students in IBX who participated in what we're terming as mentorships. Internships is another term that could be used in this. And then there's the next year there was about maybe a dozen or a little less. This last year there were 12 students. Well, last year 4 completed their internships, and this year there was 12 students who applied. Currently I do not have a record of any credits earned, but as I was corresponding, it's one of the issues is these students, and again highlighted by Ingram staff, is the students have enough credits to graduate, and so there's some things about that we're working on with them. And I think as Associate Superintendent Director Tolley and I were discussing, we're like expanding the internships. I see that's something that we really do need to double down on as we expand some of our CTE opportunities.
Director Harris.
Thank you very much. Again, it's no secret that this is a passion of mine, and it's no secret that I think we can do better. I will withdraw my objection to the box checking OSPI form. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments about this item? Okay. I mean, I'll just add that, you know, in terms of what is offered at Ingram, it's my understanding that we could do more. And that was a promise that was made when IBX was first established. And there needs to be more energy put into that from the district. And so it seems like by checking that box, we're saying that we do it to some extent. I don't think we're saying we're doing a complete effort on it. I do also think that mentorships and internships, here we're just talking about advanced learning, but it's something that we should be doing in all our schools. And it's an interesting conversation to have. And I will support this, recognizing it's a limited document. It doesn't really explain everything we need to do. But I don't think opposing it is going to advance the greater cause. So, thank you. Director Burke.
I want to concur that the mentorships is something that we want to cast a wider offering for, and to share with directors and with staff that's probably should be one of our expectations for the upcoming CTE program plan. That work of Dan Gallagher and his department.
Director Geary.
Having personally lived through it, I'll just weigh in since we're all adding a little something on this. What I found was that when I lived through that experience and my son, ended up with an internship, I guess, it was a mad scramble. It didn't feel very supported throughout the program in terms of something that they were building to, that the staff was helping them with. Now, he was the initial class. And so they'd had 3 years with that cohort in the building to sort of figure out what they were going to do in the fourth year. And yet it came upon us like a ton of bricks. And it rolled out about similarly as gracefully. I wish that I had faith that that is different now for those families, and maybe it is, but I think that is something we should continue to look at in terms of educating, coordinating with our skills centers, and making it feel like this natural progression, as opposed to, hey, it's your senior year and now go out there and scramble and put something together by yourself, which is exactly how it felt to us. And after having received such a great high quality education up to that point, and he is doing great now, to have it just so fall off the rails that last year was really disheartening, and I think ultimately kind of was a loss of opportunity for him and clearly some of our kids that have worked really hard through that whole IB program. So those are my 2 cents. But it has really nothing to do with this form, so.
All right, are there any other questions or comments on this item? Okay. Ms. Ritchie, the roll call, please.
Director Burke.
Aye.
Director Geary.
Aye.
Director Harris.
Aye.
Director Patu.
Aye.
Director Pinkham.
Aye.
Director Peters.
Aye.
This motion passed unanimously.
Okay. So we now move on to our other action item of the evening. That's amending board policy number 3422, student sports, concussion, and head injuries.
I move that we approve and amend board policy number 3422, student supports, concussion, and head injuries.
I second the motion.
Okay, and may we hear from a representative from the Operations Committee?
Yes, this was heard at the February 16th Operations Committee and moved ahead for approval.
Okay.
Good evening, Flip Herndon, Associate Superintendent of Facilities and Operations. So the time between the last board meeting and this one, we don't have any changes to the policy or the language, but we do have a couple of follow-ups. I want to make sure I give an opportunity for the person who heads up our athletic trainers, Andrew Little, and also Dr. Stan Herring from Harborview University of Washington Medical Center to talk very briefly just a little bit about the program. And then I can comment on another follow-up question on this. and we certainly appreciate them taking the time to come down here and being able to present. So Andrew Little is the taller one.
Yeah, I guess so. Hi, I'm Andrew Little. I'm the athletic training program manager from Seattle Children's Hospital, and I'm just here to really talk more about what this looks like from a frontline perspective. Athletic trainers take a policy for a district, and they implement this as for healthcare for high school students on the front line. This is our 9th year. It's also our 9th year of actually taking these actions that we're writing about and that you guys are approving. We've been doing this for a while, so I can speak a little bit to that. From education to coaches and families, to education to athletes, from baseline perspectives and baseline evaluations for athletes in contact and collision sports, to having time to sit down with coaches and actually not just go over a policy, but talk about how we're going to implement this in real life. To sit down and say, when an athlete gets a concussion, this is what you're going to do, coach. This is what you're going to do, assistant coach. We're going to activate with mom. We're going to activate our emergency action plan and communicate with parents and school nurses and our athletic directors, so everybody will be in the know. And then take that and provide the education from the work that Dr. Herring has done with the CDC and implement a full perspective, not just a simple policy. So that's the work that's actually already been going on in this district for 9 years. Beyond that, the follow-up care that goes into the work from our sport concussion program and the pretty robust care that we're providing already is what I would say. The major thing that I would say for tonight is, how does this fully go in, and does this change anything for us as a group of athletic trainers? No. This is work that we're already doing. This is work that we're already educating a lot of coaches at the high school level. This is also work that we're already implementing in with the coaches and the athletic directors within the school, as well as the school nurses. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Stan Herring, and I appreciate the time that the board gives me. I'm here to support what Andrew said and to see if I can also be a resource for you. I'm a physician at the University of Washington office at Harborview. I've spent my professional career interested in brain health of active people and athletes. I direct the UW-Medicine Sports Health and Safety Institute. I co-direct the UW-Medicine Sports Concussion Program. I probably co-direct a few more things that someone's probably pointed me to while I've been standing here. And we have a strong and long-term commitment to the importance of keeping young people active. It's the single most important thing we can do to assure the health of the people that were here tonight. We want to keep that safe. I've read your concussion policy. I've read the way it's been adapted, the sudden cardiac arrest policy. The board should be commended for being forthright, interested, and concerned about the welfare. It's really was quite an honor to sit here tonight and listen to these impassioned speeches, and it makes you proud to be from Seattle. And I think that perhaps my voice is more quiet, but my interest is no less intense in making sure that we do everything we can to protect the brain health of young people while we let their brains develop into the leaders, which I could see they're going to be. And the University of Washington, Harborview, Seattle Children's remains committed to working with the school district to do everything we can on the health and safety side to protect these young athletes and scholars and students. So thank you.
Thank you. Director Harris.
I'm very pleased to follow up Director Blandford's questions at the last board meeting about where we stand as a school district and as a state with respect to concussions, traumatic brain injury, etc. This is the gentleman I was speaking about. He is a worldwide hero on these issues, and I could not be more pleased that he's down here. Thank you, sir. Videotape, we'll send them the link.
So the other follow-up question was just about how this gets implemented and kind of coordinated between the different user groups. Our interscholastic athletics, our club, and then our users. So those are all outlined in here. It is an we kind of have some coordination that we need to do between departments because these are 3 different areas. So throughout this policy, I'm going to make sure that I'm leading that effort to make sure that we have all that information, all the departments are communicating with each other. We have another section in here on the cardiac arrest piece that's an online portion, and I'll make sure that I report back and update the board by the end of this school year, which would be by the end of June, the progress on all of these pieces.
Director Harris?
And we have had conversations about club sports.
Correct.
So by the end of this school year, you will have a report back to us where we are on risk management training, et cetera, on the club sports. Is that correct?
Correct.
Terrific. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If there are no further questions or comments. Okay, Ms. Ritchie, the roll, please.
Director Geary.
Aye.
Director Harris.
Aye.
Director Patu.
Aye.
Director Pinkham.
Aye.
Director Burke.
Aye.
Director Peters.
Aye.
This motion passed unanimously.
Yeah. So we now move on to the introduction items for the evening. We have 7 of them. A number of them are all coming to us from the Ops Committee. So the very first one, though, is the Elementary School Feeder Grant, Year 2 from the Satterberg Foundation. That came to the Executive Committee on March 2nd, where it was advanced for consideration. Let's see. Perhaps Kelly Aramaki can remind us why it was consideration. Was there some missing information, or?
Yeah. Hi, Kelly Aramaki, Executive Director, Southeast Region. We advanced it for consideration. You advanced it for consideration because you wanted a couple of things changed. So we changed it to intro March 15, action April 5th. And then we added a section on evaluation under the benefit to students section. And then we also cleaned up the schools that will be receiving the support from the Satterberg Foundation. So it was specifically for the Denny feeder schools. It'll be Concord, Highland Park, Rocks Hill, West Seattle Elementary. So those are the main changes.
All right. Thank you for making those changes. Director Harris?
And Executive Director Aramaki, did you also not give us an appendix, potentially, to this board action report that addresses the assessment of our efforts?
I did. So if you look on page 5 of the board action report, I detail what the accountability and evaluation will look like just to measure the implementation of this support. And then within that section, I talk about measuring fidelity of implementation of the core curriculum, student progress monitoring, using assessments, agreed upon assessments. And then there's the third bullet says implementation of data analysis and progress monitoring systems in all 10 of the schools as part of our multi-tiered systems of support initiative. And then the last one is we talked about adding, looking at staff climate survey around some of the key climate survey questions that attend to curriculum and multi-tiered systems of support. And so Director Harris asked for more explanation of the third bullet around data analysis and progress monitoring. And so in front of you is it an appendix or an addendum, or anyways, it's one more page that talks about, it's a deeper look at data analysis and progress monitoring. And so what this document shows you is the Seattle Public Schools MTSS framework on database decision making. So that's database decision making is part of the MTSS framework. That's articulated on the left, so you can see that part of MTSS. And then on the right, I explain the overlay of the Satterberg support and alignment expectations. And so just to give you an example, for MTSS, we're asking for schools to have a data dashboard. We're asking for schools and classroom level data points to be collected. And then we're asking for ongoing data collection and analysis at each of the schools to assess the quality of instruction, curriculum, student performance, et cetera. And so then on the right side, it says Satterberg grant alignment to that MTSS initiative. I think that's one of the most exciting things about this grant is that we are aligning it to our MTSS work and to the K-5 literacy adoption so that you can see what MTSS looks like through this. But basically, for Satterberg, what we're looking at is creating a data tracking system for every school to monitor student literacy assessment data using common assessments. That will have a common timeline for which to give assessments, for teachers to analyze assessments, build out similar MTSS team structures so that the principal specialist can come together and look at students who are below standard, who are at standard, and above standard in order to make decisions on who needs more intervention, who needs more acceleration or enrichment. And then at the bottom, it just articulates how teachers, they're looking at classroom-based assessments every day, but it says, weekly to bi-weekly. Teachers look at the classroom or curriculum-based assessments with their colleagues within their grade level, and that information is used to help them make decisions about what whole class lessons they want to teach or what small group lessons they need to teach or any individualized differentiation for students, again, who are struggling at grade level or advanced. And then 3 or 4 times each year, the MTSS team comes in and supports the classroom teachers in looking at the common assessments to track students that are growing, students that are stagnant, or students that are declining. I was at Aki Karose this morning, and they call it their Peace Cranes who are soaring, gliding, or diving, and they put it in those 3 buckets. Because our goal is that no matter where the student is, whether they're below standard or above standard, we want all of our students to be growing and improving in their learning and not stagnating or falling behind. So it's not as I was telling Director Harris during the break, it's not a perfect articulation of the database decision-making part of this grant, but it's at least kind of a 1-page summary of what it will look like.
Director Burke?
This is very cool. So just to clarify, the right column about the Satterberg grant, is that actually language from the grant?
It's not.
Or that's a summary or synopsis of the grant based
Yeah.
on decision making?
Yeah, basically, I took the one sentence and expounded it
Okay.
into a page. But the grant is going to pay for 3 literacy coaches, 1 for each of the feeder patterns that feed into Aki, Denny, and Mercer, plus an assistant principal who's going to guide that work. And between the 3 literacy coaches and the assistant principal, part of their work is going to be to create this, make sure that we have this strong MTSS system to support the K-5 rollout. We talk about teaching as there's an art to it and then there's a science to it. And I think MTSS is very much the science of teaching and learning. So using data, tracking assessments, having really clear systems so that kids don't fall through the cracks. Anyways, that's probably more
And
than
so the
that.
data tracking system for the Satterberg grant, that aligns with our data dashboard. They're going to be able to use our data dashboard and don't have to create a new tool or a new tracking system?
That's the goal. So I know that like the MTSS team, they're working on common data tracking. And right now, if you go to these 10 schools, a lot of them use Excel to track their data. Some of them have it up on their walls to track student data. Some of them are using OneDrive and different things. And some are doing old-fashioned paper and pencil. But what we're hoping is that all of the schools have a common way to track literacy data. It's really important that we know exactly what level kids are reading at all times. And we want there to be an easier way to look and see at each of the schools and then compare across schools.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Director Harris?
This might be a question for General Counsel. At what point do we asterisk this as the 3rd bullet item under accountability and say see attachment? Do we amend this board action report to do that? Can we do that tonight, or do we wait until action? And Mr. Aramaki, thank you for being so responsive. We made the ask last night at Audit and Finance.
So are you basically, you want to make sure that you asterisk the additional document, the appendix that you mentioned?
Yes.
Yes, I think that's something that we could tee up and do at action.
And
But I
include
think-
it in for the record, because right now it's not part of.
Yeah,
the
get it
record.
included for the record at action. And then, so the understanding is you want that as part of the record when you act on this at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? All right, thanks. So the next item, oh, okay, Director Geary has a question.
Will there be people from the Satterberg Foundation here when this comes up for action?
Yeah, so I put out the ask. I haven't heard back yet, but we're hoping to have at least somebody from the Satterberg Foundation to be here at action.
That'd be very nice.
Okay.
Okay, so the next item is BEX 2, BEX 3, approval of budget transfer from the Building Excellence BEX 2 and 3 program underspend for implementation of an energy efficiency project at 6 Seattle Public Schools. I want to go straight to the committee representative from Ops, who could perhaps speak to the next 6 items.
Yes, the next 6 items were heard at the February 16th Operations Committee meeting, and all were actually moved ahead for approval except for item number 6, which was moved ahead for consideration.
Okay, and then now I'll go to Director Harris. Oh, no, we don't have to do that. Okay, we go to, all right. We go to Mr. Best.
So the first item that you're considering is the approval of a budget transfer for the Building Excellence 2 and Building Excellence 3 programs for underspend for implementation of an energy efficiency grant or implementation of an energy efficiency project at 6 schools: Arbor Heights, Hazel Wolf, Ballard, Bailey Gatzert, Denny International School, and South Shore. Those schools were recommended to move forward for a couple of reasons. One is many of them are BEX 4 projects. With the BEX 4 projects, there's a code requirement that they be solar panel ready. And so there is minimal improvements that we need to make in order to make those schools, to put the solar panels on. Second consideration that in our decision-making process was that these schools would also have new roofs, and the photovoltaic arrays are to last approximately 30 years. These roofs are projected to last approximately 30 years, and so it seemed like a really good systems on top of systems approach. You replace the photovoltaic array, maybe with technology that's more efficient. You replace the roof at the same time 30 years from now. Also in the board action request, we highlighted the different funding sources. We have submitted as of March 9th for a request from the Department of Commerce in the amount of $500,000. We anticipate that we'll hear back from Department of Commerce mid-May. We've also been engaged in conversations, and there was a gentleman who spoke earlier tonight with Hazel Wolf K8, who has talked about having a small solar array at that school as a demonstration project because of its environmental STEM focus. And we said, well, we may be able to provide you with a solar array that would be on steroids. Literally 100 kW is what Seattle City Light currently allows. They were looking at a 10 kW solar array. We are currently anticipating at all 6 locations installing 100 kW solar arrays. The environmental benefit from this project would be that Seattle Public Schools would reduce its CO2 emissions in the amount of 778,895 pounds. So it is a significant environmental project as well. We also think it offers a wonderful opportunity to educate kids. Part of the construction contract when we move forward after your approval, hopefully, and I hope that's not being presumptuous on my part, and also after receipt of the $500,000 from the Department of Commerce grant, which is being presumptuous on my part, is that we
place a kiosk in the schools showing students how much energy the solar array is erecting. And so I would open it up for questions. I guess I would like to make one last point, and that is we are in conversations. You'll notice that there's a big fat zero with Seattle City Light utility. We have approached Seattle City Light. We've been engaged in conversations with them. We finally wanted to move forward. We're going to continue to be engaged in conversations with them to see if they will make a contribution to this project. They have a program to make a contribution to this project. We would actually like to see them make a larger contribution than what their current program allows. So at this moment in time, it's zero. During our conversations at Ops Committee, we noted that we had done a cash flow study, because one of the things we looked at is as there are monies that we can borrow in order to implement this project. Assistant Superintendent Berge did not feel comfortable borrowing for this first project, but we had implemented a cash flow to say this is a positive cash flow project. If we were to borrow the funds, we could pay back the loan with the money that this was saved for Seattle Public Schools. And so I made that comment at the Ops Committee, and we've included that cash flow. I believe it's attachment B, but it could be, it's attachment C in your board action report. So I'd open it up to questions.
Director Burke?
I have a question. This is amazing in so many ways, and I'm wondering if we can put one more on it. I had seen something come through, and I don't recall if it was in a Friday memo, whether it was from the district or whether it was from our support team, about the annual savings, excuse me, of some of our energy conservation issues. And I'm not sure if that vague description is enough to jog memory on that, but I think something that shows how our green buildings and our energy conservation initiatives are truly paying back. This is another opportunity to kind of put that up front and center.
Yep. So I can articulate on this that we involved the district's resource conservation managers in the conversations surrounding this project. We had identified 14 schools. We decided, we know that the Department of Commerce is also going to have a grant next year. And so we selected 6 to go forward with this year. And then we'll look at bringing forward another measure next year with potentially another 6 schools. And hopefully another grant application submitted, and also maybe some participation then identified from Seattle City Light. I will reach out to our RCM and see if I can find out about the annual savings and what was in the Friday memo.
Thanks. I love the idea of a kiosk in the school, and having this be something which is another local and national story about how Seattle's a thought leader in this area.
Director Pinkham?
Since it was brought up in public comment, can you speak to the concern about the BEX 2 being over budget, but now we're borrowing against it?
I heard the comment. I can't speak to it. I will have Melissa Cohn address tomorrow at the Operations Committee, and I'll try to get it. I'll be able to speak to it at action. I can tell you that there is a slight nuance difference. The BEX 2 funds were noted as unallocated funds transfer. The BEX 3 funds were noted as underspent. And so I'm not sure what that nuance difference is, but I know that I'll bring that clarification forward at action. So, but there is a nuance difference here in the board action report.
Okay, thank you. So the next item is item number 3, BEX for award contract P5089, bid number B11632 to Western Ventures Construction Incorporated for the Jane Addams Middle School Voluntary Seismic Improvements and Minor Alterations Project, Phase 4.
Yes, so we opened bids on Phase 4. Phase 4 is the last phase of construction work that would be planned at Jane Addams Middle School under BEX 4. The project was publicly bid on March 2nd. The good news is that this project opened bids under our architect and engineer's construction estimate. And so we're recommending that Western Ventures be awarded this construction contract. Western Ventures is currently implementing the improvements at Meany Middle School. They have previously done several projects for us during the summer, so they're used to working in compressed timeframes. I think this is a great news story. This would be a good project and will complete the work at Jane Addams Middle School that was identified in BEX 4.
Questions, comments? Okay, let's move on to number 4, BEX 4, approval of budget for Cedar Park Elementary School reopening project.
With the reopening of Cedar Park as an exploratory options school, we engaged in some conversations with the building staff as to how the facility was operating, if there needed to be any minor adjustments to have it open as a exploratory school. That was working with the building principals and the planning principal for Cedar Park at that time, Dee Dee Fauntleroy. She made a recommendation of approximately $100,000, which is in Exhibit A and includes things like key scans, interactive projectors, wiring for interactive projectors, providing a library, adding a kiln, and so that's highlighted in the attachment. In addition, we know that we had moved the existing furniture from the existing Olympic Hills School that was constructed in the 50s to Cedar Park. That furniture is not new. It will not be moving to Olympic Hills, the new school. We're purchasing new school for that, but we thought to create equity, we should also purchase some new furniture, purchase technology, because we don't have any technology. The technology at Olympic Hills today is very antiquated. We'll need to provide curriculum and supplies, and so we're requesting a budget transfer from the BEX for program contingency to implement this work. And it is highlighted. And then Director Harris, you asked that we highlight how we're spending the curriculum dollars, further break that down, and so you have that as Exhibit B. And Director Harris made that request at Ops.
Director Harris.
We've gotten a fairly significant amount of pushback about Cedar Park and the Seattle Pre-K program there and the dearth of restrooms for little people. Can you address that some?
So currently we're planning a 2-up model from pre-K through 5th grade. There is one restroom in one classroom, but that classroom has a door in between it to another classroom. Those 2 rooms we were looking at utilizing for pre-K. There are sinks in all of the classrooms in the main building. There are no sinks in the 8 new portables that we provided. So access to water in the classrooms is available. Restrooms, it's only available in one classroom, but there is a door to another classroom, so there's access, and that's where we're looking at putting Seattle Preschool program. The restrooms at that school are ADA compliant, but they are large, multi-stall restrooms. There's one for boys, one for girls, and that's all that that school has at this moment in time. Per your conversation at Ops, we are looking at, is there a way to extend and create additional restrooms? Haven't got that information at this moment in time. I do have a project manager working on that. So,
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, let's move on to item 5, Bex 4, approval of budget for Decatur Elementary School reopening project. I assume this might be somewhat similar to the previous one.
Correct. It's very similar to the previous one. Opening Decatur, we also had identified some facilities improvements that needed to be made there. We recognize that some of these students were going to be going to Cascadia, so I will not say we're creating a equivalent environment, but we're trying to provide them with new furniture, new technology, new curriculum, and then going in and making some identified facilities improvements as well. And again, we're recommending this be taken from the BEX 4 program contingency.
Any questions or comments on this item? Director Burke?
I'm sorry, I actually have to go rogue and back up one because I had a question I forgot to ask. Has the previous bar been evaluated by the incoming planning principal that has now been identified?
That it has not. It was worked with Dee Dee Fauntleroy, and then Decatur's was worked with Rena Gohagen.
Okay.
But it has not been evaluated with the new planning principal. I will reach out and make sure that happens.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions or comments, let's move on to item 6. BTA 3, BTA 4, award contract K5076, bid number B11638 to Spin Turf LLC for the synthetic turf replacement at Old Van Asselt and Whitman Middle School and field lighting infrastructure at Whitman Middle School project.
Yes, so this replaced existing crumb rubber fields with cork crumb rubber fields. Both these sites are existing, and we have bids that were within our budget. We are at Whitman Middle School providing the infrastructure to come in and at a later date potentially place lights at that site. We're going through a SEPA process at this moment in time, but we want to implement lights at all of our high schools prior to implementing one at Whitman, prior to implementing them at Whitman Middle School. This project is within budget.
Fantastic. Director Geary?
Do we anticipate this community throwing up barriers to evening lights? Do we have any
I would
any
say that
understanding?
technology has gotten so good, Director Geary, that light spillover, which would have been an issue 10 years ago, is not an issue today. I mean, we will have the research from working with the various lighting manufacturers to show exactly what it'll be at our property lines. And I would anticipate it would be, at Whitman, it would be next to nothing because it's a very large site.
Director Burke?
Whether this is something you can address now or in a memo or at introduction, it maybe is a little bit more complicated, but the Whitman site, recognizing that it's a potential BEX 5 candidate, if I want to be really thoughtful about how we're investing in that site versus, are we going to do some type of a rebuild in place, or are we going to have an interim site? What do you see the risk of disruption for this work?
The best location for that new building is where the current building is located. So I would see us if we were to rebuild Whitman Middle School at that site, wanting to locate it at its current location and having to transfer those kids for a year, potentially two, to John Marshall. We have looked at that, Director Burke, and it was one of those situations where the location where the fields are is not a great location for parking. It's not a great location for a building. And so you'd really want to keep the fields in that location. So, yeah.
Any other questions or comments about this item? Yeah, thank you. Let's move on to the final item. Item 7, BTA 4, approval of modification number 3 to contract K1255 with SM Stemper Architects for the Ballard, Garfield, and West Seattle High Schools roof replacement project.
So I spoke with you and you approved increasing the budgets for these projects. This is for the additional architectural work associated with the increased budgets for these projects. And then when we selected the architects, not knowing what the scope of work was going to be regarding the investigation phase, or excuse me, the observation phase when the contractor was implementing the actual construction of the project, we indicated we would negotiate that at a later date. We now know the scope of the work. We know the window of time that we're going to allow the contractor to implement the work. And so in this bar, you have a cost associated with the additional architectural design fees, and then a cost associated with the architect's building envelope consultant to review and confirm that the work indeed is being constructed as articulated in the contract drawings, and that's broken down in the attachments to this project, or to this bar.
Director Harris?
Not to belabor the point, but can you give us a paragraph on what a building envelope consultant is and what their purpose in life is for us?
A building envelope consultant looks at the exterior of the building. He examines the roof and the wall cladding. When you are talking about buildings the size of Ballard High School, which is approximately 175,000 square feet, you're talking about materials that expand at different coefficients, that react differently to ultraviolet. And so a building consultant helps guide, envelope consultant helps guide that process. Also, they look at wall claddings. For this project, they are looking at the roofing materials that are going to be installed at Ballard, Garfield, and West Seattle. Then they're also looking at the cladding materials that are going to be installed on that perimeter wall at Ballard, and they're looking at the cladding materials that are going to be installed at West Seattle. West Seattle's is all historic in nature, so they're having to take that into consideration as well. So they provide guidance and make sure, again, that all the different components have similar lifespans. They all have different expansion coefficients, but that's the guidance they provide us. And then they go out and they make sure that that contractor is installing the products that are specified so that we get what we thought we were buying. If something else, gets used and it has a shorter lifespan, that defeats a system, because these are truly systems. They're not just roofing materials. They all got to work together. Yeah.
Are there any other questions or comments about this item? Director Burke.
Sorry, I haven't done my homework. I'm trying to get the numbers to match up here, because this seems like a really big number for architecture services on something that's a replacement project. And then I go into the detail, and there's about $200,000 of design and inspection. Is
Yes.
there another number that I just haven't added in?
So if you're looking at the architect's letter, item number 1 is for the scope increase that we identified through the investigation phase, Director Burke, that you approved. Item number 2 is the roofing inspection services. We don't really know how to negotiate roofing inspection services until you have a good understanding of what the scope of work is. And so at the time we negotiated the architect's original contract, we indicated we will come back and renegotiate this once we better understand the scope of work, because they're going to just throw money at it, not understanding exactly what the scope of work is, to make sure they don't lose money at the very beginning of a project. Very similar also with geotechnical engineering. You go in, you do borings, you learn a lot about what's done in the site, and then you better understand the observation inspection services you can provide during the course of that work. You don't want to negotiate those up front, or they'll be very conservative in the numbers that they provide. And so here you've got an opportunity to say, I want you out here 3 times a week. I want you out here a minimum 4 hours a day, making sure that the products that we're specifying are being installed and are being installed correctly and in accordance with this architect's drawings.
I think that makes a lot of sense to me. I'm struggling with the 456 number, 456,575. What is the scope of that work on something which is a roof repair project?
Well, it expanded at Ballard High School. We provided a drawing here. We expanded to include the roof at the gymnasium, which was not initially included. That's a standing seam metal roof. It's not a single-ply PVC roof. It also, you'll note in your drawing that the entire perimeters of this are highlighted darker because the exterior wall cladding on the inside of the parapet walls leaks. And so we need to pull that off, correct the problems underneath, and then reinstall that. And so that is literally around the entire perimeter of Ballard High School. Then you go to Garfield, and at Garfield, there's some issues concerning skylights that weren't initially identified that are being added, and some unused deck penetrations that weren't anticipated, and then the liquid applied flashing membrane, which was required by the Landmarks Board at Garfield in lieu of using what would be what you'd use on a building built today is metal parapet flashing. And then at West Seattle, we pretty much, I'm going to say almost doubled the scope of work at that school. We identified additional historic roofs that we needed to replace, plus used the term widow's walk. There's a widow's walk at that peak. That's not historic tile, it's three-ply. It's a three-ply. We need to come in and replace that as well. It has aged out. In addition, there are some historic cupolas at West Seattle. There are 5 of them, and we are repairing those as well. And the repair there again is overseen by the Landmarks Board, by the City of Seattle. So that's what that additional work is for. They have actually reduced the percentage in their contract because the amount went up, so they've reduced that percentage with this additional work, their overall contract amount. It was greater than 8.75%.
I think the question I'm trying to resolve in my head, this isn't for the actual contracting work, this is for the architecture and inspection component of that work.
Correct. This is the architect's contract, and the architect has the building envelope consultant contracted to him.
And I'm just trying to understand on a re-roofing project, what is the scope that requires architecture? Is that the, you think of re-roofing, it's primarily construction services and there's not a large design component.
Oh, there's a large
And that's what
design
I'm trying to
component.
learn, what the design component is in
The
this.
design component would be where that roofing material intersects with all of the different other building systems. It's also with the new energy code.
Okay.
These roofs all have to meet, when you're replacing a roof, you have to bring it up to meet the new energy code. And so that's the elements that are in here. So the new energy code is going to require greater height for insulation. So how does that work with the parapet walls that are fixed height? Are there, do we have to raise those parapet walls? I do not believe we're raising the parapet walls, but there are some areas where we're right at the top of the parapet walls with that new insulation. So that's what the architect's looking at.
Perfect. That was exactly the line of inquiry I was trying to get to. I just didn't know how to ask it. So thanks for that clarification.
Yep.
If there are no further questions or comments on this item, I call this meeting adjourned at 8:25 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.